Finally, Ernie received his discharge from the Navy in August of 1946. He had applied to several hospitals for a residency in orthopedics, but unfortunately there were none available. He was able to get a 6-month residency in the admitting department at the Rhode Island Hospital. We decided to live with Mother in Norton until after the baby was born, which was due the 1st of October. Ernie was able to travel to Providence with Ralph, who was still working at the Providence Journal as a photographer. Mother made a nice bedroom for us in the old part of the house. About the 1st of October, Ernie's father, Doc, asked him if we wanted to buy his Buick car. He was turning it in for a new one, and we could have it at for the same amount the car dealer was offering him. So Ralph and Elsa drove out to Ipswich so we could buy the car and drive it home. It was a great relief to finally have a car, and just in time. On October 10th, I was awakened about 5 a.m. with labor pains. Ernie drove me to the Providence Lying-In Hospital where Mike was born at noontime. 8 pounds. A beautiful baby. We started looking for apartments in Providence. Finally, we found a 5-room furnished apartment for a 6-month period. It was not far from the Rhode Island Hospital and within walking distance of Hope Street. Ernie did our shopping on the way home from work. The first dinner I cooked was a huge success. The apartment had no oven, just stovetops. I made a pot roast of beef in the pressure cooker, along with potatoes and onions and carrots. Ernie invited his brother, David, who was an intern at the Rhode Island Hospital at the time, and they were so pleased to have a home-cooked meal. We were happy to have our own place. In March of 1947, David, Ernie's brother, asked him to be best man at his wedding in Philadelphia, and his bride-to-be, Eleanor, asked me to stand up for her. Doc and Liz, Charlotte, and Don picked us up early on a Friday morning. I had arranged to leave Mike with a nurse friend at the Rhode Island Hospital. I took him, crib, bottles, clothes, etc., to the nurse's home where he got constant attention and specialized care for the weekend. We arrived at Philadelphia about 4 p.m. We checked into the William Penn Hotel and changed for dinner. We met Eleanor and her mother Clarabelle and all had a lovely dinner together. The next day, the wedding took place, followed by a reception luncheon at a nearby hotel. On the way home, we stopped in New York City to shop at Macy's. We each bought something, a gift from Doc. I bought a pretty journal skirt. I wore it for many years. Soon, our 6-month leave at Brewster Street was going to expire. Luckily, we found another furnished apartment for 6 months on Woodbine Street, just off North Main Street in Providence. It was on the 3rd floor, but quiet and nice. Ernie had another 6-month residency at Pawtucket Memorial Hospital in family medicine. He had to work for 48 hours and then would have 24 hours off. When he was working, I would set up my sewing machine in the kitchen and put all Mike's toys on the floor, and he would play while I sewed. I made most of his clothes and mine, too. Ernie made our bathroom into a dark room, which he used to develop and print the pictures we took on his day off. We also started looking for a practice for sale, or a house suitable for a doctor's home and office. We answered many ads. One was in Bristol near the Lobster Pot, where an older doctor was retiring and wanted to sell his home and practice. However, it was much too expensive for us. We looked at another similar setup in Taunton, Massachusetts, but decided against it. My friends from training, Eileen Dwyer and Hope Bailey, urged us to come to Pasco to see a home for sale, which we did. It was on Laurel Hill Avenue. It was much too big, much better suited for a nursing home. I used to scour the newspaper for ads, and one day I saw one for a house in Oakland. I called the number listed, asking the resident respondent if the house was suitable for a doctor's office. He said yes. He asked me where my husband had trained, and I told him the Rhode Island Hospital. He told me then that his wife is a nurse and was a Rhode Island Hospital graduate. We soon found out that I knew her and she had worked with Ernie at the hospital. We made an appointment to see the house. It was a long trip on a dirt road from Providence to Burrillville. We could see how this house could be converted into a doctor's office, and the price was within our reach. We were able to get a VA-approved mortgage with no money down because we were both veterans, although we had to have Ernie's father co-sign the loan agreement because Ernie had no previous income to support the loan. This was late October of 1947. We had to be out of our apartment in Providence by the 1st of November, but we hadn't signed the papers with the VA yet. Norman St. Pierre, the real estate agent, gave us the key to the house so we could move in. We only had a daybed, a crib for Mike, and a kitchen table. Teddy St. Pierre, Norman's wife, loaned us a hot plate and a couple of chairs to tie us over until we could buy what we needed. They were very kind to us. As soon as the papers were signed, we had a local carpenter put up a petition in the living room, dividing it into 1/3 for the waiting room and 2/3 for our home living room. The front door opened into the home area, so we put up a folding screen guiding patients into the waiting room. We were able to buy all of our office furniture and medical supplies from the Claflin Company in Providence on the installment plan. They also gave us a discount to buy our home furnishing from Reutemann Company in Providence. Soon after, we had a new stove and refrigerator from Blackstone Valley Electric, and also a washing machine. Patients started calling and wanting to see the doctor before the carpenters were finished with the remodeling. Ernie placed an ad in the newspaper announcing that he was open for business and listed office hours from 2 to 4 and 6 to 8 p.m. Soon it became more like 1 to 6 and 7 to 11 p.m. Because Ernie needed me to assist him during office hours, giving shots, doing dressings, and taking blood, I had to hire a babysitter to look after Mike. And also because Ernie had only one office, we used to have a lot of patients who only needed an injection or a dressing come to the back door, and I would take care of them in my dining room. Accidents, cuts, etc. soon automatically came to the back door, and my kitchen soon became an ER where Ernie sewed up lacerations after I had cleaned them up. The phone rang constantly, so many problems for the doctor. I would have to screen them, take their numbers for Ernie to call back, or if urgent, call him to the phone. Many questions I could handle myself, but often booked Ernie for house calls after office hours. It was unusual for us to finish seeing office patients before. Thursday was Ernie's day off. Actually, he didn't take any time off for the first year because there were so many bills to pay. We had to buy storm windows for that house and a new furnace with baseboard heat, and eventually we added a new room with a separate entrance, which became the new waiting room. On Thursdays, we also had shopping to do, or errands, and then in the evening, we often went out for dinner. I had groceries delivered to the house from Smith's store in Mapleville. I just call in my order, and it would arrive by delivery truck that day. One of the patients of Ernie's was a meat cutter in a store in Connecticut, and he offered to get me what I needed. He would come to the house and cut it into the sizes I wanted. Ernie had bought me a very large deep freeze for Mother's Day. So this man would bring a case 24 of broiler chickens, a dozen legs of lamb, a rack of pork, and a side of beef. And he would cut the beef into steaks, roasts, stew beef, and then take the rest home to grind up for Hamburg. He would bring that back the next day. I would also get several packages of chops out of that order. It proved to be a big saving and a great convenience. The night the meat man came, I would be in the cellar wrapping meat till well after midnight. Ernie made a workshop in the cellar where he used to enjoy making model airplanes on his day off. When they were finished and fitted with remote control engines, he would take the boys with him to Hillsgrove Airport to fly them. Hope Bailey offered to stay with the kids. By then it was Mike, Brad, and Jeff for a long weekend, our first vacation. We went to Northfield and Dartmouth, taking pictures of our alma mater. We heard that Joanne, Ernie's sister in Ipswich, had a friend who owned a cottage at Little Neck, a summer resort on the ocean. They would rent it by the week for $35. We signed up for the month of July, and it became a yearly event until Matt was born. It was so wonderful to get away from the constantly ringing phone and relax, swim, sunbathe, and eat lobsters and clams. Ernie's parents lived in Ipswich, and Dave and family would stay with them for 1 week while we were there at the cottage, so it was a yearly reunion. Joanne, Ernie's sister, lived in town, and Charlotte and family would come down from Maine for the day. One time we all went to Charlotte's cottage in Maine for the day at Higgins Beach. The practice was getting busier and busier. Ernie had become the area medical examiner as well. He would be called out any hour of the day or night by the police to pronounce someone dead. Car accidents, fires, suicides, and any unnatural death were under his responsibility. Also, the house at Lappin Corner was now becoming too small for our office and home. Brad, Jeff, E.J., Clay, and Matt were born there, and with only 4 bedrooms and 1 bathroom, and a busy medical practice in the same house, it was bulging. Ernie had been looking into the